Shalom Day of Yeshua. Hag Sameach, Sukkot Day 6.
Shalom, little friends. How are you?
How are you living in your temporary sukkah? Have you been cold or have you felt very hot during the day? Have you eaten inside it? Have you slept peacefully? Or are you cleaning it? Are you enjoying the fruits that adorn it?
Yossi, these festivities are very happy and with many lessons for our lives as pilgrims in this world. For example, Yossi, with the passing of days, the branches of the sukkah are already drying up. The wind moves the sukkah when the rain falls. But those are teachings to our life, because we are a sukkah.
Yes, Sharon. In the Sukkot festival, the Father allows us to rejoice, but also to learn about our pilgrimage. That is, our life from the time we were born until we are old and go to sleep to that temporary life, which lasts a few years.
Yes, Yossi, we call it pilgrimage. But to call ourselves pilgrims, we must live with the hope of heavenly abodes, because if we live without that hope, then we would be like many people who wander aimlessly, without eternal hope, only making material treasures that are damaged or stolen.
And these days, we have learned about characters in biblical history, about their pilgrimage, from the patriarchs Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, and Moshe, about how they have been consecrated, clean, and simple sukkah in their pilgrimage, trusting in the Father and His promises. But today, we will learn about the life of
Of David, of King David.
Yes, Sharon. Really, in history, we find many men and women of Emunah, fearful of the eternal, with an impressive pilgrimage, who faced many challenges, tests, and afflictions. But those situations helped them to strengthen their Emunah and manage to be righteous before the Father.
Yossi, I remember that the story of David's life is very interesting because he had different scenarios from which we learn a lot. But how was David a temporary sukkah if he lived in the palace, ate delicacies, gave orders, and had servants? As children, and in these days of reflection on Sukkot, the Feast of the Cabins, what are you going to teach us?
Sharon, the reflection is about the stage of David's life, when he was a child and young man, when he was under the authority of his parents, when he learned the instruction and learned to love the Father and exalt only Him with his song, although all his life he sang to and exalted the eternal Father.
Yossi, I like to sing to the Father. Little friends, do you like to sing and exalt the Father? Yossi, I heard you singing to the Father. It would be good for us to sing together, and the little friends to join us as well, and so we can rejoice on this day of celebration on Sukkot.
Sharon, was it really heard?
Yes, Yossi, but you shouldn't be ashamed. When we sing for the Eternal, it's special. It's an offering to Him. We all have a different tone of voice, and He likes to hear different voices. Can you imagine if we all had the same tone of voice?
How funny, Sharon! You're right. At the end of this teaching, we will exalt the Eternal together. Now let's start with the story of King David. In the first historical book of Samuel, from chapter 16, it tells us that David was the son of Isai, of the tribe of Judah, a young man who tended his father's flock, since he was the youngest of the sons, and the eldest were in the army of King Saul. David was chosen by the Eternal, through the prophet Samuel, chosen among his older brothers. He was anointed as king of Israel, after the Eternal rejected King Saul, because he did not obey the Eternal's commandments, and he only hoped to do what the people wanted and in himself.
Yossi, when King Saul was rejected, the Ruach of the Eternal departed from him, and an evil spirit tormented him. So his servant gave him an idea to look for a man who played the harp, so that he would feel better when listening to the melodies.
Yes, Sharon. King Saul thought it was a good idea, and the servant told him about a son of Jesse who knew how to play the harp and was powerful and brave, and a man of war, discreet in his speech and good looking, and the Eternal was with him. So David went to Saul with the approval of his father Jesse, and stayed with him, and came to esteem him greatly, and made him his armor bearer, because he found favor in his eyes. And when the Spirit of the Eternal touched Saul, David took the harp and played it with his hand, and Saul felt relieved and improved, and the evil spirit departed from him.
Yossi, what a great story! David learned to sing and play the harp while taking care of his father's flock, right? Far away on the mountain, he talked with the Eternal Father. Yossi, that's why he wrote such beautiful psalms like the one that says, "The Eternal is my shepherd." The psalm where he says, "We are his people and the sheep of his meadow," and many, many more.
Yes, Sharon. And at each stage of his life, he wrote different psalms to exalt the Eternal. He faced different challenges, tests. Although he made a serious mistake that brought him sad consequences, but he never forgot the Eternal in his pilgrimage. He was humble and recognized his mistakes. He asked the Father for forgiveness, to turn to him and leave sin.
David did teshuvah. Yossi, we can see how David loved the Torah of the Almighty.
Yes, Sharon. The little friends have some portions of the Psalms ready. David, a sukkah that exalts the Father.
David teaches us that there is nothing better in this life, in this pilgrimage, than to live in the Torah of the Eternal. That in his instructions we find joy, help, strength, correction, warnings, and everything we need for a life in shalom. And that the Torah should be our delight.
For example, Psalm chapter 119 has a lot of verses, and in them, David talks about the Torah and its importance in our lives as children of the Eternal Father.
Some portions say, "Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I will keep them until the end. Make me understand, and I will treasure your Torah, and I will keep it with all my heart, because I love and delight in it."
Your statutes have become my psalm, in the dwelling of my pilgrimage.
I am a companion of all those who fear you and of those who observe your precepts.
Oh, how I love your Torah! All day long she is my meditation.
7 times a day I exalt you because of your righteous commandments.
So let us be a sukkah that exalts the Almighty, learning His Torah since childhood, and living in it every day of our pilgrimage, as a temporary sukkah that exalts the Almighty.
What did you think, Sharon?
Yossi, sometimes I'm wrong too, but I try hard not to repeat the same mistake, and I ask the Father to help me remember His commandments, to obey them daily, just like David.
Yes, Sharon. On this pilgrimage, we are going to go through many trials and challenges. But if we keep the Torah in our minds and hearts, it will be easier to walk in a way that is pleasing to the Father. And when we make a mistake, we do not justify ourselves or blame others, but that we recognize that it was our mistake. The Ruach of the Father helps us to recognize our faults, either through ignorance or carelessness, but never sin by rebellion. For that, we must be careful not to let our hearts fill of pride, anger, jealousy, lack of forgiveness, and that which makes our hearts bitter and does not allow us to do teshuvah.
It's true, Yossi. That pleases the Father. We learned that on Shabbat, when our parents set an example for us. For example, the sin of stealing leads us to the commandment of, "You shall not steal." If we did not know that taking things that do not belong to us because we like them is not correct, if we do so, we already sinned even though we ignored it. But when we study the Torah, we see that it is a commandment of the Father. Now we no longer ignore it.
That's right, Sharon. But if one day we take something from another person and we accidentally don't return it, and then you find it with you, and you didn't mean to have it because it isn't yours, it was an oversight. You stole out of care, but you can return it. But if every time you see things you like and want them for yourself, even though you know they belong to others and you don't care, you take them and take them away, even though you already know the Father's commandment not to steal, you are already sinning rebellion.
So with all the commandments and ordinances of the Father, we must learn what the instruction is, so as not to sin out of ignorance. Be diligent, so as not to sin carelessly, and be humble, so as not to fall into rebellion and offend the Eternal Father.
Little friends, the life of David teaches us to be a sukkah that exalts the Eternal with its song. But what we express with our song must reflect our actions, what we speak, think, and feel. That is a full life, fair before the Father, our family, and all people. There will be times when we make mistakes, but that is an opportunity to reflect and ask the Father for His help, His forgiveness, and so we will continue to grow in our emunah, growing spiritually, to reach the stature of the perfect man. Do you remember who is the perfect man?
Yossi, I remember him. Yeshua is the perfect man.
Tomadei of Yeshua, Hasakasak. We still have a lot to grow in stature, in wisdom, and in favor before the Eternal Father and men.
Let us be a sukkah that daily exalts the Eternal in this pilgrimage on the way to eternity.
Hag
Sameach Sukkot!
With great joy, you will appear before Adonai on the 15th day of the 7th month. You will celebrate Sukkot, Sukkot. In temporary buildings you must celebrate Sukkot, Sukkot. Your fruit before the Father you must praise Him. With songs full of joy you will exalt Sukkot, Sukkot. 7 days you have this, you will rejoice. Promises of Yeshua we remember on this festivity. By heavenly abodes, the earthly ones He will transform. Sukkot, Sukkot. In temporary dwellings you must adore Sukkot, Sukkot. Your fruit before the Father you must praise Him. With songs full of joy you will exalt Sukkot, Sukkot.
activity. We are a sukkah that exalts the eternal. Little friends, for this day 6 of Sukkot, download this activity while we dwell in our sukkah with the help of Dad and Mom. We must write a song for the eternal. This song must be based on the Torah, the Psalms, the prophets, the teachings of Yeshua, or the teachings of the emissaries. It must be something spontaneous, like a fruit that is pleasing to the Father. It must be something that you have learned, something that you want to thank the Father for, or what you like about this pilgrimage. Share your song written in a scroll decorated with the elements of Sukkot. It can be a sukkah with fruit, tree branches, or the idea that you like the most. Take a photo where you can read it clearly and ask your parents to take a video of you exalting with your voice and your song to the Father. And don't forget to say, Hag Sameach Sukkot, Day 6!
Little friends, remember to visit the Cielos Nuevos y Tierra Nueva website in the section Niños at www.cielosnuevosytierranueva.org and download all of our free material. We have a WhatsApp and Telegram number, +52 33 28 24 91 85, where you can send your photos and videos when solving the activity of We Are a Sukkah that exalts the eternal, sharing your song to the Father like a pleasant fruit in the Sukkot festivity. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Cielos Nuevos Niños. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Cielos Nuevos Niños. And let's continue learning about the Eternal Father's instruction.
In the next teaching, Sukkot Day 7, the 21st day of the 7th month. Little friends, see you at the next teaching on the 7th day of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. Shalom!